All right, we can go ahead and get started. It's 4:06 on May 15th, 2024. We're back again with Lake County Schools and LCEA Bargaining. So I think we've got pretty much the same folks we have here, minus a few. We've got principals that are busy, and thank you to the ones who came, and the teachers also, I know, who are equally busy, and appreciate everybody being here. Just the week flew by really quick, so we were able to get at least some things put out there, and I'll get some updates later in the meeting when in regards to MOU and other various topics that might be lingering around. We did bring the district proposal for compensation. So we'll go ahead, and anytime we have a change in compensation, that also impacts our instructional salary placement schedule. So we'll pass those around also. We'll go ahead and get them moving. So what you'll have is a favorable performance sheet, which would be the focus, the first one, and then we'll talk a little bit, as much as necessary, on how that impacts the other salary schedules. We've got the instructional salary placement schedule for both regular instructor and the psychologist scale, because we did want to get back in the habit of not sliding up the psychologist scale. Because we went through that exercise before, and we're like, oh, we need to address that. So you've got kind of a mix on the compensation proposal. The language at the top is updated with the standard language, but then it reaches back using similar language that we did a couple years ago when we raised the starting. So all of which is based, as we know, on what the sum of the results will be of this year's evaluation system. So by raising that floor, it also allows you to bring out some people that perhaps were brand new or that did not hit that effective tomorrow. But out of our compensation subcommittee last time, you know, I was pretty clear we wanted to stick to what we felt like was within the statutory guidelines for what we can, the way we can provide compensation. However, you know, just out of good exercise, I went back and made sure to review, you know, the old COLA language, which basically says that, you know, you can only give a COLA. They're so nice that they do a specific COLA just for education, while everybody else can do what they want. That you can only max it at half of what you would give for an effective rating, which in this proposal would be, you know, $900, which of course, when you go talking COLA impacts everybody as we're talking cost of living. So that's what we have to consider. That blows up pretty quick. It takes us outside of what we can afford budget wise. So that's why you don't see a COLA proposal. And then we had a little talk about longevity, and there were some requests to look at how some other districts were doing things, and we talked about familiarity with some of that, and you know, I bounced that off a few folks, and there's still not a desire to operate outside of what we felt like our original determination of statutory language was. Which, you know, there's a line in statute that says any compensation for longevity of service awarded to instructional personnel, they have to be calculated as salary adjustments according to the statute, which lays out highly effective and effective and all those rules. So it basically just circles back into those rules, because when they did not have that line in statute, they had some districts that ran in and did it, and then they course corrected in the legislature the very next year and added that line to prevent people from being able to do that legally. So here we are with our proposal will be for highly effective. You'll see we offered $12.50 last year, that's slashed, looking to increase that and provide a $2,400 highly effective performance pay. Performance effective, $1,800, grandfather highly effective, by following statute, is at $1,920. And then grandfather effective, we match up, because we feel like we can do something, with the 1,800. You'll see that also reflected in the new salary placement schedules that we've raised the minimum salary to 49.5, which expands the compression by a year to 0 to 20, which unfortunately unavoidable. Looking at where other districts, we do usually lead the league in getting settled on our contracts. A lot of folks, that's what they start getting a little confused because they start seeing in the news, coming out of February, March, like all these districts are settling in their contracts. They don't realize it was last year's. So we've already done that work. And I have to give that credit to our CFO who tried to make sure that there's room for significant compensation increases in our budget. So that's where some of that confusion might come from. But anywho, we just looking at and attending some of our conferences where I do see what some of our counterparts in contiguous counties, which those are the ones I really focus on. There's some like size around the state, but it's really more relevant region, right? And so our contiguous counties, I can tell you they're right neck and neck, and it seems like that's one of the drawbacks of us setting a little early. Sometimes they'll edge us over a little bit and trying with their starting pay, but I could see everybody's kind of approaching that $50,000 mark. We explored that, but again, it expanded beyond what the budget could hold. So I imagine we'll still remain competitive. Sumter's is way up there. That's just, we all know what their tax base looks like and the drastically smaller amount of employees that would be there. Same type of methodology. We want to keep the same spread that's been consistent. So you'll see on the psychologist salary placement schedule, compression expands by a year, and that beginning salary for them starts at $54,769, where it was now is at $55,657. So those are the proposals that we have put forward this evening.
Okay, and I know that I mentioned, and it was mentioned several times, we've been looking at other counties and looking at research and gathering data and information. And there are many counties that are doing different things, and they're not calling them longevity or retention, they're calling them other things. Plus the fact that, percentages, in trying to get, our more experienced people. And of course, this unfortunately just creates more compression than what we've had already, which doesn't help our experienced teachers whatsoever. I will say that, yes, okay, you get people here, but as I've said many times, they don't stay. The retention has to continue, and we have to want to have our teachers stay in Lake County. I'm not for sure if this creates that. Understanding that, yes, understanding law, but a lot of districts, because as I said, we're researching it now, and there are many districts that are going, what do you call it, outside the box, whatever you want to call it.
Illegal.
They are doing it and no one is getting dinged for it, let's say. But we need to figure out somehow that we can help the teachers to create the experience to get them to stay and retain and be here, rather than going somewhere else. We have a lot of counties, and yes, I agree. I mean, Sumter's, yes, Sumter's way up there. I mean, that's kind of, is what it is with Sumter, but the rest of them is around us, and they're somewhat similar, except the fact of they are working with and trying to get the experience, whether it be a supplement, percentages, whatever it is, and several of them, again, they're doing different things, so we'll have some more information and data to deal, and see what we can do, I don't know. But-
Well, I mean, and you know, obviously you got some counter propose and we can look at it, but I just feel like we went through years of going through this exercise and combing the statutes and getting interpretations from our attorneys. And we can relive all that again. And, but I can tell you the position of the board and the superintendent is that we're not gonna get into the semantics of things that will be contrary to what's in statute. So, I mean, but who knows, you know, the creativity, you know, you guys might run across something that can fit into that window that we haven't been able to recognize. So, hey, well, you know, whatever you would like to put forward. But what I would say is if you've got people that are, if they're comparing their salaries to their colleague next to them, I don't know what their feelings are gonna be. But if our goal is for them to look at the compensation that's offered to the individual, and we would hope that they would see that as a handsome proposal to their own personal salary. And, you know, we're doing the best we can and trying to operate within the guidelines of the statutes and the budget restraints. So.
Oh, I understand that, I understand the teacher coming around, but you also have the teacher that is, whether they're next door or whatever, but they look at this and say, oh yeah, well, the beginning teacher comes in at 49.5 and I'm still only making 51. That's $1,500 more than, you know, I'm getting $1,500 now, yes, okay. They're gonna get $1,800 more, let's say, and so that brings them up a little bit, but still, it's the idea that they look at that and they say, oh my gosh, where's my help when I'm down here at 25 years and I'm still not,
But I think there is some confusion out there though. I mean, because if you've been in this district, let's say the past 5 years, and you've been doing well with your performance pay, which we have a pretty friendly evaluation. When our, you know, we base the budget that, you know, we know that we're approaching probably 60% of highly effective teachers. So if you've got people that have been accruing that performance pay, they're gonna be pretty well above what an incoming teacher will be. So it's easy to look at the scale and say, oh, well, you know, if I'm on in that compression window, you know, I'm only making X amount. But there's folks that have been here for a long time and have stacked up, and you'll see it in the salary files that you guys have requested. So looking at the salary schedule, it's really where it hurts is we've got people making good in instructional positions, making very good salaries, but it's the people that will be looking to come into the district that would be tough, because say if they were in Orange County and they built themselves up to $60,000 over the past 8 years, based on whatever pay performance they've gotten, and then they come into us and they've got, you know, 15 years of experience, they're losing all that and going back down to 49.5. Whereas our people with 15 years of experience, probably, I would reasonably believe they're nowhere near that compression window. So, but you can see that, and that's what I would encourage is y'all. But that's why y'all request the files, right? So y'all can dig deep into it and really see, you know, who's being impacted by that compression. You know? So we'll look forward to seeing what you guys come back with.
Okay.
So some of the MOU updates, summer school, to mention whenever I came in, we're still hammering out a few of the logistical details. It's mainly around extended school year. They're trying to figure out some of the times on there. Nothing too earth-shatteringly different than what we've done in the past. But they're trying to work out a few of those details. So as soon as they have that draft fine tooth. I'll send that over, guys, send that over to you to review. We just need to get things settled out by June 3rd, will be the first day. Night school,
So
I'm sorry.
just to clarify, so that
Yeah,
those watching whatever, then this would be basically then a subcommittee, because we
Yes.
don't come back until the 5th, which is
Correct.
after the time.
Correct.
So then you would just get in touch with us and we'll put some out there, to those that are maybe doing summer school or something, make sure that it looks okay and.
which is not uncommon to what we've done in the past for
Right.
summer school, because it does get moving fast. And a lot of times, determining funding that we have to support, where they're dropping grants in our lap in the last minute, or taking things away in the last minute, or whatever the case may be, or new demands come about, we've always kind of been, summer school gets done really quick. So I appreciate you guys working on this.
And where are the summer schools? Do you know the schools right now?
I can send you the location sites. I don't have those off the top of my
Okay,
head.
because I heard Beverly Shores was one of them,
It's
For
about,
summer school,
for summer
you
school.
might,
Beverly Shores, Lost Lake,
Yes,
Eustis Heights. Also, we have Lake Hills that runs a summer program as well.
Hills, okay.
Now, those are the main summer ESY programs. There's other schools in the district that do other programs.
The other stuff, like the high schools that have
Correct.
had in the past. And
Have in
the
the
things that
past,
they do.
correct.
And I'm assuming they're still gonna have those also,
Correct, yes.
okay.
Now, if you want an official list of all the schools participating, then that's different. I will have to touch base with the district to find out
Okay,
how many are actually participating.
yeah, eventually when we talk about summer school stuff, the MOU, it would be nice to
That's
know.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Still working on night school. She had some grant parameters she was trying to work with him to figure that out. Which, the night school piece won't be back in effect until we return in the fall anyway for changes. So, but we'll work that out through sessions. The transfer of donation and sick leave, we're pulling the data right now. Board Relations is pulling all of that. Like I said last time, as we first looked at some of it, I feel like it was successful, but we're not, in case the subcommittee wants to tweak some processes. So we're still working on getting the date set for joint committee. SI additional support, waiting on scores and designations of schools still. The additional class periods for additional class period / students MOU, pull the data on that. That did not impact elementary schools this year. There were 23 total teachers that were paid for taking on an additional class period, which is basically they're paid for the planning outside of the normal day. But 12 of those were the usual Eustis Heights things we do through our Eustis High School, where they're going back and forth from the campuses and we pay them for a period of travel. And so basically it wound up being 11 total that were in that MOU that most of them were in the middle school with K-8s that took on a period until a vacancy got filled. And out of those 11, only 7 of them are still current. So it had the intended impact was we keep it posted, we get it filled, then they could then they wouldn't have to keep teaching that period and they'd hand it back to the new teacher.
So 7 of them have been.
7
basically all
enrolled
year,
for most of the year. Yeah.
most of the year.
Some of them came along later due to resignations, but most of them were things that were vacancies. And what we find is 2 things. Usually the teachers like it because it's $200 extra a week, right? So they like that. And then really though, I think the core of it is the students sort of become theirs, right? And they don't want to relinquish the students at that point. So that's kind of where we're at as far as I don't see any problem with renewing that and updating that MOU. Just in case, right? Because I don't want to remove that structure in case we do have some issues. But I think when that MOU came about, it was super crisis mode of, man, we had a ton of vacancies where I think we've done a good job of put some dents back in that and hopefully we'll be okay. there were a couple other, issues, although Title I and critical shortage, we know we still got meeting, talk about those areas. I've got recruitment pulling on that, seeing what areas they feel like will come into play, and I've also engaged our academic team to see what they're seeing. Everybody knows ESC, right? But we need to see what's the most necessary outside of that. So there are some things statutorial, that we might have to open up just due to some changes. I don't know if you guys are familiar, it's in our Article 10, but the removal of students language that we have, they created some statutory language that, for the most part, basically just put in statute, kind of what we already have in contract. But we're going through that, I've got an attorney looking at it, we're looking at it on staff to see, okay, what are the differences between the two and how that will impact us from a contract standpoint, because, you know, as you know, in our contract, if something changes, from statutory standpoint, we make a change. Outside of that, we've got, we're taking a look at our supplemental, schedule also. I know that we've got some requests that have come in, and some you guys have probably seen, that are also coming, judging by some of the visitors I've seen. And then also, we've got an opportunity for some CAPE funding to maybe perhaps cover some of the things that are in that, career technical areas, that the things that CAPE covers,
Right.
that we might be able to. And you know how that goes. Some schools with their other club stipends and additional curricular stipends and all that, if they're covering some things in CAPE, that might free up some opportunities for some other things. So, Ms. Ellis and her team have put forth some things that we're doing some research on to see. And then there's been also a burning desire, for the possibility of one of our schools piloting a water polo program, which I've kind of suggested, perhaps an MOU to see how that goes for a year. But because as soon as we heard that this was a thing, the very next, month, I heard that, and it's mainly down in the south end where there's an interest in this, because Orange, Seminole, and everybody south of Orlando are interested in those types of things. I don't know, Umatilla, you might be pushing for a water polo team.
And broken too, okay.
There you go. So, but that's what I try to explain to people. He would want his cap roping as soon as I, gave somebody water polo. So, but what I heard from FHSA last week was the possibility that they might not sanction the sport anymore because there's only like 50 teams in the statewide that are participating. So I think it took off with some growth and then it's dissolving. So we wanted to look at that and see what the impacts of that would be. So all that being said, there's probably going to be a desire to open up a supplemental schedule. Mainly I really want to take a look at the CAPE positions. Anytime we find a new revenue stream that can get money to teachers going above and beyond, we always want to support that. I think that's all kind of and the last thing was you guys proposed language from last time. I've given that over, reviewed it with superintendent, reviewed it with, I don't know if you're familiar yet or not, but Mr. Feltner will be stepping in as a fellow assistant superintendent, to senior cabinet. So I've also given this language to him, and our senior academic cabinet on their side will, they're reviewing all of it. And, they're like, oh, everything's struck. I said, well, here's the deal. I said and this is how I interpret it, because you guys didn't say much other than, we didn't address it last year, we need to address it this year. And I said, this language is difficult to interpret. That's one thing we can probably all agree on. And that I asked them to look at it through their lens, start reviewing it with principals, and the reds and the principals, and okay, how can we accomplish the goals of what we need to do with the kids every day at school? Also allowing for growth and progress, through initiatives that are meaningful. So that's kind of how I explained it to them, because, the first time people looked at it like, oh, okay, well, we're not gonna do anything with this anymore. So, no, that's not what we're saying. The other side of it, sub coverage, pulling data on all that, right? And seeing, we've been looking at it all year, and yeah, it's hard, I hate for teachers that have to cover other classes. But at the same time, when I meet, I have a substitute team that I personally sit on. And we look at these, that our attendance data for instructional, especially for classroom personnel, is tough. We've got a tremendous amount of absences, and I know the reasons, right? I mean, there's several, stress, right? And then obviously you've got contractual allotted amount of leave days that people are gonna take. And then, then you combine that with the unknown of things that come up for people. We get it, right? But we're looking at some of the peaks and the things, Mondays and Fridays, rough.
Right.
It's tough. So, that's part of the thing is when we're looking at, okay, I get it that you've got folks that probably darn near have perfect attendance that are being pulled to cover and sub for some classrooms. But then they've got their colleague, that's the one that's causing some of that because they miss so much work. And so it's tough because I can tell you punitive measures in the research that I've done, they're not effective.
Right.
We're just gonna exacerbate the problem. So that's something I feel like while we're talking about sub coverage, we've also got to, explore the areas of how do we lessen the need for the sub coverage also. So those are the things in the language that you guys put forward. I think we've got some common interest in both sides of the proposal that you guys put forward last time.
When you are gathering maybe some of the sub coverage data, might also suggest that you look into, especially, elementary. I know middle school, they somewhat do it. It doesn't happen, I don't think, in high school, but the idea of the splitting of the classes. Because especially in elementary, they split the classes a lot. Because, my partner's not here, but I'm gonna split them now between the other 3 or 4. And I realize it makes sense to do that, because then the students are still getting what they need. But on the other hand, it does create more work throughout the day for those teachers. And I don't know whether you can gather that or not, but I know it happens quite a bit. When they, and again, you don't have a sub coverage, but in elementary, it's harder to go in just for one period. And so they tend to, and a lot of times it's just, oh yeah, I'd rather have those extra kids than try to just cover for the one period. But again, it's like, I know that happens a lot.
I think a lot of times, like, well, honestly, there's some prearrangement through the teachers and their teams. Cause I think if I know if I have, would I rather, spread a handful of kids across my team and know they're getting quality instruction that day because we've been collaborative planning, we know we're on the same page and they're gonna get quality info that day and skills? Or would I rather trust them to a sub where it's gonna be romper room for that day, right?
Right.
So I think some of that happens internally. And like I said, it's hard to put your finger on.
It's hard to put that, but I mean, it's also though, then again, it's hard on the teacher, especially when like I know it's happened several times with, and maybe that's something some administrators could kind of give you just a guesstimate of what it is, because a lot of times, again, especially with elementary, oh, well, this one's got to be out for 3 weeks for something. So for 3 weeks, I have these kids in here because again, easier on the kids and they get their instruction and they get everything. But then that's harder on the teacher too, to have all those.
Yeah,
So
3 weeks that's a lot.
it's a lot. I mean, it is, and I know that has happened in a few schools. And so it makes it difficult. I mean, I understand again, like you're saying, yes, it's easier because then the kids get the instruction, understand that. but then that's more on the teacher also.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm saying a lot of this is coordinated through the teachers themselves, right? And that's where we've got, and I mean, I don't know if any of you guys want to briefly speak to what you're experiencing at the elementary level as far as that goes.
I can speak to that. I know for us, it's not a common practice. We don't like to do that because it does put a hardship on teachers. Occasionally, they do split that amongst each other. We really try not to do that unless we absolutely don't have any subs and no TAs.
Yeah.
Like, we exhaust every last thing, and then it's never for more than a day. We don't even do 2 days back to back. We come up with another plan.
And I think that's what 3 weeks is what concerns me, right? I'm like, that's.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I think a lot of the occurrences will be some last minute things, or I've got to leave for half the day, something's come up, last minute call in type things. I can see where that's probably the majority of what happens. But I guess like you said, we need to identify where that's happening, where it's become just a common practice. Maybe they become nose blind to it and it's just kind of a go-to approach to it, and that doesn't need to be necessarily a practice.
And I think most of the time, just splitting something internally, like what you're saying, it's more like, hey, I have to go off to the doctor this afternoon, and so can you guys split it for this last hour of the day, or something like that? Yes, that I understand, but for most of the time, I don't think it's all the time that it's like an all-day thing that these people are, I mean, it's like they don't really do that themselves to say, yes, I want to take those kids for all day.
Well, and what I wonder is because we stay on subs. I mean, I've got a sub team that it's nonstop interviewing people. If you ever see the posting come down, it's because they're interviewing around the clock, and we don't want people applying and sitting in a hopper for so long because it takes time to get the interviews conducted. But we've got people heavily interviewing constantly. So I sometimes I question whether some of the particular schools, how much effort's been put into acquiring subs, make sure the absences are in the system. It's the last minute ones that are tough.
Yeah, last minute,
That's
it's hard for middle school because they're all taken then at that point, because the middle school, it's the last one to go, and so then that's difficult too. And I mean, I realize that, but, and then of course, some schools are harder than others to get subs. Is there a way to, I'll say shorten, but like, is there a way to make the process any easier at all on, for the substitutes, for those, for example, let me say, like, a substitute coming in, for example, we have sometimes retirees, they just retired and they want to come in and do a sub, and they make them go through the fingerprinting and the whole process again when they just left the district. I mean, is there certain things that?
But we do fast track it every opportunity we can fast track and fast track. If there's a break in service that we're required by law to fingerprint and do the things we have to do. But we don't make them interview, if we're familiar with people, we don't, but that's the catch-22, right? Because the people that are coming in, some of the folks we've got coming in now, and this is every position, it's not just substitutes, man, we have to scrutinize them extremely. It's pretty wild. Some of the folks that are trying to get in and some of the backgrounds they're trying to bring in with them, and the attempts that they make them mask some of those backgrounds. And then you get into folks that don't realize that we truly are a drug-free workplace. Doesn't matter if they have a prescription or not. Not that I want to know if they do, but when they're coming in the door, they don't get it, right?
Yeah.
So, medicinal doesn't necessarily work for us. So
Yeah,
it's, we just run into so many challenges, but I know that's one that we put such an emphasis on it, even though it's an actual position, because I know where it flushes out and it's in these guys' classrooms. So we are removing barriers the best we can.
okay, well, I mean, I guess let us know if there's a way that we can do a subcommittee, if you need a subcommittee or something like that. I mean, we're willing to help if there's anything possible that we can help with.
Yeah.
to help in any way with these substitutes, because, I mean, we know we need them, and it helps, of course, the teachers when they can at that point.
And, you know-
And I understand, because I've been in the classroom, been there, done that, so I had some great ones, and I had some not so good ones either, so I realize we have unfortunately that situation.
Everybody thinks they can do it until they're trying to do it.
Until they're there.
But we
yes.
watch that carefully also. But one thing also that you might not do, we watch, so what I do is I watch our fill rates and we monitor those fill rates once. I have people monitoring them constantly, but we make decisions based on them monthly. And if we have schools that dip below a certain level of fill rate, I add a bonus pay onto the substitute pay. So basically you have, a lot of your few that you know are difficult, right? At the elementary level, they always have been. It usually rolls right along with their DA status or SI status, we come in class. And then pretty much middle school. So they are dreadfully fearful of substituting in a middle school, and if you work in one, you love it, but you understand where they're coming from. So we try to really put that little boost on middle schools, and it's tough because what you'll wind up with is, say, for instance, a high school who has a large faculty and staff. When that absentee piece comes in there and they have a tremendous amount of absentee, but a high fill rate for subs, all the subs flow into that high school. And then the difficulty comes with what's left to go into the other schools. So I call them sub sponges. Sub sponges, high absentee, but a great looking fill rate of subs, because the subs love to come and work. High school's kind of like, it's not quite as tedious, right?
Right.
In
Right.
most circumstances.
Right.
So, we'll continue to grind on, and yes, and it might not happen, maybe it starts with brainstorming and then evolves into a subcommittee, and then we see what we can do there. And, I want to look and see what's fair and balanced for people that are covering classes.
Do you happen to know, I know some schools, is it on their own that they have like a permanent sub, that they just hire like one or two or whatever they do? Is that on the school themselves to do that?
So what we do, we
'Cause I know
have,
some do.
because you have some that are guaranteed, there's gonna be absences, right? Which is pretty much all of them now, but you have some that I know they're gonna have a minimum of 5 absences that day, no matter what, rain or shine. So what we tell them is establish those really strong relationships with those subs and just tell them to come. And they come and they develop that relationship. Then it's just a matter of those people clicking in. We're big on building relationships with those subs. So what we'll see when we see a low fill rate, and we actually put in some measures to try and impact that. We'll not only just throw a little extra money at it, we actually send a couple people out from the sub team, because it could be that there's a new sub contact there, and that's why all of a sudden we've seen a big dip. Or it's an old sub contact that's been there a while and they've fallen into bad practices, like just spreading classes out constantly and not putting forth effort to really, build those relationships with subs and get them to come in, because that is the key. We've got some schools, they're 100%, because those subs show up every day and they show up for years, whether they got kids in the school or not, doesn't matter. And when we actually survey our subs to find out why is that like that, it all goes back to relationship, how they're treated when they hit the door, whether or not they got a basket of snacks there for them, whether they've got a good solid, whether the lesson plans are there on dependable and they have good, a good framework to provide instruction that day. Do they have a badge? Do they have all the things that make them feel part of that family? Because my goal is to hopefully move them into a TA, get them to get a degree, and then get them into a classroom. So it's a full chain that we're trying to work through with that. Never ends.
And just to let you know, going back, we are also gathering data and hopefully have some more on some surveys and different things on all the things that we've kind of talked about. So we're doing our little surveys, so we have things to do, plus the other counties and looking at things, so.
And I'm keeping my eyes peeled for things that are unconventional also. I don't want you to think I'm being totally closed-minded about it, but at the end of the day, it's kind of where we're at right, as far as conversation.
So it looks like you went over all of that that we had. The next meeting is June the 5th.
Yes.
Do you want to set up any kind of subcommittee meetings for anything before that?
I think, you know, I feel like we'll do a small subcommittee in summer school, to answer questions. But I want to make sure I've actually got everything in hand and I feel good about what I've got in hand.
Okay.
So I'll let you know on that. The rest, the transfer and sick leave, I'm struggling to get things on the calendar at this point. We had to move mountains just to get a school board workshop the next Thursday, but, I've got to set some dates with SEIU. Hopefully I can do that tomorrow. And then let me get with you on what I have around the couple. I need to at least put 2 dates on the calendar with them. And one of those though will be that combined subcommittee
For
for the sick leave donation.
for the sick leave
Yeah,
transfer?
transfer. Yeah.
Okay,
And I've got to get, the academic side of the house has been stretched out, so I've got to get with Tiffany Scott on, the peer teacher mentoring to set up. We need to meet on that and have some, I'd like an update, and I think you guys need one also, and then we can figure out what we go from there.
oh yeah, I mean, we have other things that probably going to propose, we just haven't had, as you said, like enough time to kind of make sure that, the language, we focus mainly on the plan time, because that was like the main thing that, teachers were wanting, because they're losing a lot of their plan times, and not necessarily just SAI schools. I mean, it's a lot of schools, because, they're losing time, for whatever reason. And most of the time, it wasn't mentioning like the MTSS or they're not even worried about those. I mean, it's like, no, they take this planning, and then they're always asking me to sub, and they're always asking me, so those are the things, and that's why we stuck with that first.
Gotcha.
And then we'll look at, some other items that we can, propose also.
Okay, well, then, that for years, that's what we chew on the most, right?
Years.
So,
But again, I mean, it's, think about it, I mean, you might as well just say 2 items, it's
Mhm.
compensation and working conditions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, lump them all together, and it's,
well, I'm excited. I think we're gonna have some regrouping, at the district and kind of some refocusing, and what I encourage, with the folks I talked with and showed the initial, proposal to was let's get, it's basically things have gotten way too fragmented on what's going on in schools out there. There's way too much variety, right? It's gotten a little wild. So let's reel it back in a little bit and see, I feel like we can accomplish our goals here. They don't have to be, way out here, right? So, because I think that's what happens is, I mean, teachers, all 3,000 of them, they're pretty much, they're gonna talk to each other, and then, and some of them really like some of the unconventional schedules they're working. So, and that's where it's hard, right? Because if you don't want to get language that's too restrictive, because then all of a sudden we got unhappy teachers because of that. So, but we gotta have some, there gotta be some guardrails. Because and at the end of the day, if it's too restricted and we get into calculating, we'll go through that process again, right? Where we calculate all the minutes, what's available, what you're really doing with those minutes and all that good stuff. And at the end of the day, I know that there's a lot of things that these guys are doing with their staff that I don't know about and probably don't want to know about in regards to time and releasing people. And so I think we just have to be very mindful of some of the unintended consequences that might come with overstructuring some language also.
Right. And that also depends too, because again, as you said, teachers talk back and forth. Well, they find out that, oh, well, my principal says I can work virtual and the other one says I have to be at school the whole day. And, or whatever it is at that point, or, the bug man comes at noon or whatever. And, it's difficult then when you hear the differences among some of that at that point. While we're talking about subcommittees, Guido, do you have any idea, around the team as to what we would have to do to continue with committees and talking about things as we talked about earlier and some things of getting possible changes and updates? Would we have to, can we meet before, or do we want to, I don't know whether we want to wait.
We will have to schedule a team committee meeting for any possible changes. And I can update you, we just finally received an update from DOE regarding the plan that we submitted last year.
Okay,
So with that said, and I'm hoping that it was edits and questions they have on how we structure the plan. Basically, they have questions, so
okay,
we answered all of them and made some required changes that they requested, nothing major that impacted any of the decisions that was made in the hiring committee. It was just, they had questions on we calculate and the scores, and they wanted another example for a different level teacher, so we added an example to the plan. But, we're hoping to get that in the next few weeks approval. And then we can go and have another team committee and then go forward with any other requests that. And if you have anything that you want to bring up, again, you're one of the co-chairs of that committee, so it's a matter of bringing,
okay.
discussing with us, and we'll put one of the books during summer. I don't,
Anytime you want to call a team committee, no
Yeah.
matter when it is, we're always available to do that.
I do have a list of things that Jennifer Howard has brought to my attention that she's heard from teachers too.
All right,
So I do have a list, probably will be the same list you have.
some of them probably would be.
And because we've told them, if you have some suggestions or concerns or issues, we've noted them. So for all three grants. Because it's classroom, non-classroom, it's speed, so. Maybe we can bring those forward at that time to discuss.
Okay. All right, we'll do that then. And the appeals would be done at the end of this week? When was the 10-day, 2 days? They have till Tuesday for the appeal, correct?
Correct. So whenever, well, till Tuesday next week. Tuesday,
Yes,
September-
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
Yeah.
yeah, Tuesday. I've received, as of today, only one.
All right,
But to what Elizabeth asked me earlier, I have also been communicating with a lot of different administrators, and they've been meeting with teachers and things that happened already. That
Right.
did not require an appeal, it was just communication between the administrator and the teacher.
right, and I had one too, but I went to one, so. Hopefully some of them are just doing it with their administrator,
Mhm.
but if we need to, yeah, we'll let you know if we hear any more too, because I think there is possibly one more. And another thing, we're having, some more questions about certification again, so I don't know whether could we maybe meet again as a subcommittee, maybe with your
Yeah.
person, maybe find a certification. We have a couple people that are somewhat, I guess you'd say, like in limbo, they're having some issues with certification and trying to figure out the test and not taking the test, and it's, yeah.
Our department
So-
is wide open. If they have issues, they can call us at any
And
time.
they have been, and they've, I think, been going back and forth, and I think sometimes, no offense, but sometimes emails, and they're trying to find the information and trying to get it, and so they're confused, I think, and sometimes.
If you provide me names,
So-
I'll be more than glad to schedule meetings with those people with my manager to make sure they get that one-on-one support immediately. So that's it.
Anything else anybody can?
Good.
And you said you'd get back with us on some dates, and that's, I think, only other thing, dates on things, because yes. We're gathering data, the committee meetings, yes, just to put you, yes, RLPC wants to meet, and talk about some things with them.
And I don't mind if y'all want to, if you want to set up.
Said maybe a subcommittee
Mhm.
that possibly we can meet and talk, and, they're gathering some more information and getting some things together among themselves, and we can meet then.
I think it's gonna be very important for people to know exactly what they do.
Yes, yes. Oh,
I think there's
definitely.
some
I mean,
mystery around that.
in talking with them, I didn't realize, I mean, as many things that they do outside of, and plus, of course, they're, to me, I just assumed they were instructional, but they're instructional, but yet like not instructional. So it's like, wait a minute. So definitely conversation would be nice.
You learn a lot when you start diving into it, that's for sure. And-
Yes.
And you realize that they're having a huge impact with kids that otherwise might not have had an impact.
Mhm. Right. And then the other subgroup that I would say possibly would be, we're having some conversations with SLPs again. And so they have some things, so they may want to have, a subcommittee to discuss some things.
If there's some front end research that y'all can provide or questions, so I can come inform. May I have some sneaking suspicions? I'm sure it's conversation related, but just knowing what a couple other districts have put forward.
I think the other items would just fall within what we're already kind of discussing within subcommittees or here.
I know it sounds like a lot of subcommittees, but that's when you're trying to gather people, when everybody's off on vacation, it's easier to get specialized on what we're doing. So that way, when we do come together, it's a lot more meaningful and full groups.
It's a little bit easier, and plus it's easier because then we can kind of do, if we need to, we can do Zooms. We kind of talk with everybody, and we don't have to have, everybody here in person and do it. So it does help a little bit.
We ought to be able,
Trying to, I don't want to say fast track, but trying to keep things moving, let's say.
we got a little bit more time to work with between now and the fifth. That was a quick turnaround from last week, right? But at least we were able to get something. I don't have anything else.
I think anything else with the movies or anything, so I don't think. Yeah, I think we will come back with, as I said, some data. We'll get with you on dates, if there's anything that we can do, between now and the fifth. I know you'll come back, we'll talk about the MOU for summer school for sure. Like I said, we have some other subcommittees to start some discussions on those. And we'll gather data and have what we can bring back at that point.
Okay. All right, that concludes today's bargaining session. It's 5 p.m. on 5/15/2024. Thank you.